we talked a lot about a lot of things, really, but what kind of role does the guitar play in all of this today and
It's
in
a
your life, basically?
This is a very good question, and I'm not sure I'm going to give you an answer that you expect. I know I love the guitar. Okay, I've always
Hmm.
loved it. I'm a fan of guitarists and guitar playing. I
Yeah,
do see the guitar as being a somewhat problematic element in certain ways musically.
yeah.
When when it becomes, well, this whole guitar hero idea, which of course I was listening to all these guys when they were starting to be called guitar heroes. I mean,
Yeah.
A più mandate, a più momenti nella vita di un artista, un cerchio si chiude. Si chiude un ciclo creativo e qualcosa di nuovo si apre, un nuovo orizzonte. Per Nels Cline, Concentric Quartet è sicuramente questo, un nuovo punto di ripartenza, un'apertura su qualcosa di nuovo, su un nuovo corso, perlomeno, della sua creatività. Dopo anni di esplorazioni nel mondo rock, nell'avant-garde, nel jazz, in tutto quello che ha combinato con i Wilco, nelle tantissime esplorazioni sonore che ha portato avanti nella sua carriera, Nels Cline torna un po' al suo animo più jazz. Concentric Quartet è questo, un po' un ritorno a casa per chi chiama a casa la sperimentazione e la ricerca continua di qualcosa di nuovo.
You mentioned Concentric Quartet as the title of the record and the name of this group. So it is more of a jazz group, probably, compared to previous works you've done. Why?
well, it's maybe an accident. I
An happy
wanted to
one.
play, well, I wanted to play with these individuals.
Mhm.
I had been playing pretty informally around Brooklyn and Manhattan with the trio of Chris Lightcap and Tom Rainey. And of course, Tom and I played together in my band, the Nels Cline Four,
Yeah.
and also years before that with Andrew Parkins in a collective improvising trio that we did about 20 years ago for a few years and did two recordings. Um, so along with adding Skerrick to the singers, I have now two bands with saxophone. And prior to this, as other than Lovers, which is of course a large ensemble of many different
Yeah.
woodwinds, including uh, saxophone. I now have this saxophone presence in my music that was not there at all. I was tending always to lean towards the clarinet when I had woodwinds, for example, on the record I did. I think it's out of print now, called New Monastery, A View into the Music of Andrew Hill. And Ben
Hmm.
Gold played clarinets on that. And uh, I don't know what happened, but anyway, saxophone is uh, now in my world rather solidly. And of course, I couldn't be happier to play with Ingrid Laubrock, whom I had heard in her, extensive duos with her husband Tom Rainey, and I love their duo. But also having heard her own music in recordings and having heard her with Mary Halverson's octet, I thought that this could be a good combination, and it's turned out to be, for me anyway, quite delightful and really quite inspiring.
Malgrado siano due mondi teoricamente molto lontani, quelli di chitarra e sassofono in realtà sono due universi sonori molto vicini. Lo sa bene Nels Cline, ma in realtà lo sanno bene anche tutti i chitarristi che si devono confrontare con il suonare con un sassofono che con la chitarra condivide molte frequenze, soprattutto tra i 300 e 900 Hz, diciamo. Lo sa bene anche Nels Cline perché con Ingrid Laubrock nel nuovo album ha dovuto sicuramente lavorare in maniera diversa rispetto a quello che fa solitamente con i Wilco o con altre sue proiezioni sonore.
The saxophone can be. I associate the saxophone very much with the guitar for so many reasons. Frequencies are, we share differences in terms of probably tone, but the frequencies we use are almost the same. So, how is it to work alongside with the saxophone, trying not to overstep each other and try to actually, communicate something as a unison or something that is not a unison, maybe in contrast?
Well, that's an excellent question. Maybe not something I was worrying about too much, but you're right about the timbre and even the range of, say, an overdriven electric guitar and a
Yeah.
tenor saxophone are very close. And strangely, this didn't occur to me until I did Interstellar Space Revisited with Greg Bendian many years ago.
Okay.
And he and I very meticulously went through interstellar space and studied it. And
Right.
individually, we were studying, and I studied it very, very carefully and did a whole timeline of what ideas happened when and what I thought the themes were and all these different things. And it was at that time that I realized, wow, the tenor saxophone and overdriven electric guitar are eerily similar timbre-wise, but also in register, in range. And I don't know why this not hadn't occurred to me before, because it's so obvious.
Yep.
But I guess in terms of your question about staying out of each other's way or dealing with whatever unison sounds or similar sounds, whether I steered clear from them, I would say I did the exact opposite. There's very little sovereign soloing on Concentric Quartet. There's a lot of back and forth or simultaneous invention between the saxophone and the guitar, and that was an intention on my part to get away from too much heroic soloing, at least on my part, because I'm
Right.
a little reluctant to do that and enjoy listening to it. So, but also Ingrid is one of those players who is listening while she's playing, and that's what I do as well. So I think that what you're hearing is quite often on the recording is a true dialogue,
Hmm.
and as such, any similarities in timbre are heightened in a way that I enjoy listening to, maybe more than if we were doing long solo forays.
Arrivati a questo punto è abbastanza chiaro che da una parte nella vita di Nels Cline ci sia il jazz, ci sia la sperimentazione, dall'altra c'è il rock, quello un po' più viscerale, più grezzo, più potente, che ha a che fare con i Wilco, ma in realtà molto più con la sua anima da rocker, come l'ha definita lui. Ed è abbastanza interessante capire come una persona così proiettata verso l'esplorazione sonora sia stata capace di sommare questi due estremi, perché effettivamente estremi sono, soprattutto quando si parla di chitarra. E quindi perché non chiederglielo, perché non andare a esplorare un po' di più la relazione tra l'anima jazz da una parte e l'anima rock dall'altra, che comunque anche in Concentric Quartet si riassume in maniera abbastanza chiara.
How did let's say your rock emotion, your rock feelings throughout your career and now relate to your more jazzy side? Because you just mentioned a lot of, let's say, you mentioned Coltrane, and I can remember even just myself on a very different level compared to yours, listening to Lee Morgan, Joe Anderson, or Benny Goodman even, and trying to, listening to that and trying to bring that to guitar, just because to my ears they were feeling like just great lines that I would really enjoy playing on guitar, even though I wasn't able to. But just getting the feeling of it, just getting the mood of it. how
Mhm.
did how did your rock side and your jazz side grow up together in your life?
I think that because of my age, perhaps, it was very important in the early 70s to hear what we now
Hmm.
call fusion, but it wasn't called fusion then. And fusion is
Yeah,
another word that doesn't mean anything anyway,
not
because
really.
at the time, if you look back on what people call fusion now, but from that time, that could be everything from Miles Davis Live Evil
Yeah.
to the first Weather Report record to the Mondici band or to Headhunters,
Yeah.
or it could be Grover Washington Jr., or it could be Stanley Turrentine, or it could be, what was some of these bands that I didn't hear like that were big, like Spyra Gyra or something, I don't think
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
heard them. So in other words, it doesn't mean anything specifically, but I like to use the F word because it sends alarm bells off in so many people's minds. So I kind of want to embrace it. But my point is that that music of the from like 1970, 71, 72, what was happening then is is a crucial sort of watershed moment for me aesthetically, not just because of the instrumentation. In this case, there's going to be a Fender Rhodes electric piano most often, and there's going to be some horn players and maybe electric bass, maybe acoustic bass. There's going to be a
Hmm.
small drum set, but maybe playing rock beats or playing like, a lot, such as Tony Williams would do in Lifetime and even before that with Miles. So
Oh, yeah.
these elements are still crucial to me in my sort of aesthetic world. And so to answer your question, the presence of the saxophone uh, was almost always there, no matter how electric or not electric the music was at that time. But the other thing that had was bringing to bear on the music was a lot of freedom, and I think that a lot of that freedom was inspired by not just these, electric instruments and the presence of like a soul R&B idea way in the background, because and maybe Sly Stone is everyone's thinking about Sly, or they're thinking about P-Funk or whatever they're thinking about.
Yeah.
Same time, it's sort of the language quite often of Coltrane's so-called, modal jazz with his classic quartet. So it doesn't just stay in one scale. And sometimes the bass can even be super free. Like if you listen to Michael Henderson, when he first joined Miles, before it just became ostinato forever, his role became much more regimented. He's playing wild bass. It's not
Yeah.
always just an ostinato. So this sound and this approach is very important to me, and the presence of a saxophone in this case. Now, you mentioned Joe Henderson, who's a perfect example of uh, somebody whose presence in these kinds of recordings is very, very strong, but he has his own voice, but he's not, uh, he doesn't sound like he's being blown away by a bunch of electricity. He's
Right. Yeah.
he's holding his own and playing some amazing stuff. And he's on a lot of recordings that have this type of instrumentation I'm talking about. And my favorite, besides his records, and I love his, Black is the Color, and uh, the live record from the Lighthouse. In Pursuit of Blackness, but also the Miroslav Vitus record, Infinite Search,
Yeah.
has on most of the tracks has John McLaughlin and Joe Henderson, and just stellar band. And these recordings are very influential on me. And I think I'm striving for this combination of uh, electricity, and I guess this, as being kind of like indie rock kind of guy, if you have to categorize a lot of what's inspired me to make music in the last 20 to 30 years. Um, and this electric jazz sound that has a saxophone, but also a lot of freedom and a lot of forward momentum,
Hmm.
rhythmic. Um, so it's interesting to me that a band like Weather Report started out so much openness, so much freedom, and having heard them live in their early iteration, this really pretty wild. And I didn't even know at the time how they were getting their cues. They would just shift gears, and then they would just go. But this was very free music,
Yeah.
as opposed to what they ended up doing when basically Joe Zawinul started writing like these concerti, you know,
Yeah.
like Nubian Sundance, which I think is one of the greatest compositions ever written. But it's almost completely not improvised, and it's like, you know, 8 or 9 minutes of
Yeah.
pure through composed invention. This is an incredible combination of things to me, and it's something I'm always thinking about to this day.
E alla fine si arriva poi sempre a parlare di chitarra elettrica nello specifico, jazz master per quanto riguarda Nels Cline, soprattutto jazz master, ma qual è il ruolo della chitarra dopo tanti anni di esperimenti? Esperimenti che a volte hanno fatto sì che il suono canonico, tradizionale della chitarra elettrica venisse dissolto in una marea di non una marea, ma in un mondo di effetti molto lontano da quello che probabilmente tutti quanti associamo allo strumento nella sua anima più pura e nella sua essenza più pura. E quindi oggi la chitarra che fine ha fatto nella vita di Nels Cline?
We talked a lot about a lot of things, really, but what kind of role does the guitar play in all of this today and
It's a
in your life, basically?
This is a very good question, and I'm not sure I'm going to give you an answer that you expect. I love the guitar. Okay, I've always loved it. I'm a fan of guitarists and guitar playing. I
Yeah.
do see the guitar as being a somewhat problematic element in certain ways musically.
Yeah.
When it becomes, well, this whole guitar hero idea, which of course I was listening to all these guys when they were starting to be called guitar heroes, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's well known that Jimi Hendrix was sort of the galvanizing force behind me playing guitar for life. Although I was listening to Indian classical music and the Byrds and the Stones and stuff before that, it was Jimi Hendrix that blew my mind and sent me on my path, as it were. But the guitar at this point in my life is somewhat problematic in that for me, it's harder now to figure out what the heck I'm going to do on the guitar than it used to be. Now, I feel like
Okay.
I got really inspired in the 80s by Sonic Youth. And Sonic Youth, I became kind of an obsessive Sonic Youth fan, and they changed the way I thought about the sounds that I could get on the guitar. And not because what they were doing was so completely new or anything, because I was already listening, as I mentioned, to Fred Frith, and I was listening to Derek
Yeah,
Bailey
absolutely.
and Keith Rowe, and you know, I knew about experimental guitar, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was the impact of the sounds that they were getting with their open tunings and playing behind the bridge or with a false bridge or with a drumstick or whatever. And the group chemistry, like this really cool band, you know, this with this huge, beautiful sound, clanging sound at first, before they got effects pedals. And then they started using effects pedals and guitar tuners, and it didn't ruin the music. And it became very, very potent to me. And at that time, and also bands like Low and Deerhoof, very important to me, not just in terms of songwriting, but also sonically. So I had a lot of, I think I had a really good idea what I wanted to do on the guitar when I was doing the early trio that I had, and then the singers started with Scott Amendola and Devin Hoff at the time. And now, you know, I play in Wilco. I play all kinds of different guitar styles
Yeah.
in the course of a Wilco show because I'm trying to play what I think the song wants, which isn't always,
Yeah. Sure.
I don't have like one thing that I do, obviously, I guess. So it's just getting harder and harder to figure out in my own music what the guitar should sound like and do with it. So when I started with Concentric Quartet, I started with an idea in my mind that was going to be a very stripped down, you know, all around, moving around New York. I have this tiny pedal board. I'm trying to use fewer and fewer gadgets, and just get a decent tone, you know? And then once we start working and playing, then I start hearing these sounds in my head. And then pretty soon I need my looping device and I need my distortion.
Of course.
And I'm back to doing this, my sort of general thing that I do. But instead of me being all happy about that, just thinking like, well, of course, you know, then I start worrying that I'm stuck somehow uh, in this kind of language that's actually kind of not a language because it's too diverse. So,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? So I actually kind of am more worried and confused now than ever, you know, about the playing, you know, as far
Right.
as
Yeah.
guitar means, I mean, obviously guitar has become, I think that it's very lucky for somebody like me who is not particularly, you know, well trained or, you know, I'm basically self-taught and have a lot of holes in my musical knowledge, shall we say. My skill set is what it is, but it's not like spot on killer. You know, I can't just walk into a session and be Mr. Perfect, or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I get very nervous. But luckily, people seem to understand and love the guitar. So people like me could, you know, I mean, basically I could have thrive ultimately after, you know, however many years of sort of struggling along and just doing what I want, you know. So now it's just even more confusing than ever, but it's a pretty lucky place to be. I'm just lucky that people like guitar. I don't know what it means in jazz at this point. I'm, you know what I mean? I mean, I have all
Yeah.
these incredible jazz guitar friends these days, some of whom I became friendly with during the Alternative Guitar Summit Guitar Camp last summer. But so I go hear these guys who are I consider them friends at this point. People, not just somebody like John Schofield, who's also a hero of mine,
I mean,
but you know, Gilad
I'm talking
Hexman.
about, yeah,
And obviously, I played for years with Julian Lage, who's absolutely
a good
remarkable, and
friend as well.
he's amazing person. But also, I mean, there's so many like Brandon Seabrook and uh, Greg Belalchi and Mary Halverson and Ava Mendoza. These are all my friends, and they're all amazing and have their own language that they're you know, so articulate in essaying. Um, but it hasn't made it any easier for me.
Yeah.
Because if I hear somebody play, for example, let me think of a perfect example here. Um, I don't know. I'll just say if somebody ends up playing, oh, look, Miles Okazaki, here's a perfect example of somebody who plays with no effects whatsoever and can
Yeah.
play the most amazing stuff. I mean, he's just a complete scientist. He's a genius, right? So then I think, man, I've got to strip it down, and I've got to, you know, change my thing. I've got to learn this, and I'm going to take that away, and I'm going to do all these things. So it's a super head trip that happens. And then I circle all the way back around to
Yeah.
having to do my thing, you know.
Abbiamo aperto dicendo che questo nuovo album chiude un cerchio, sicuramente un ciclo per la vita artistica di Nels Cline e quindi ora dove si va? Dove va? Dove andrà a parare un esploratore sonoro come lui, soprattutto sapendo che da una parte la sua carriera solista prosegue indipendentemente, ma dall'altra c'è niente meno che Jeff Tweedy con una band incredibile come i Wilco.
So, Nels, we're off to now. What kind of soundscapes and new paths did this record open for you?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we're going to play some gigs, which is something I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to. But as far as I don't know. The new thing is just trying to find the notes. You know, I mean, that's just going to be new, and that's not new, but it's just going to be today's new. You know, it's just going to
Right.
be trying to approach the material uh, with a fresh, open mind, but also with a heightened sense of acumen, pitch, and rhythm wise. You know, um, everything else is I just have to go. What would the word be? I have to trust that I'm not going to make bad decisions about tone, or uh, I'll just try to stay in tune or whatever. For me, it's really about that, because especially playing with these particular players,
Yeah.
I'm, try not to suck. I mean, that's the goal. And have fun at the same time, make the music come to life and keep it open enough that it doesn't turn into like a routine. I don't really mind so-called routines. I have friends, when I started playing in Wilco, they asked me, and that's now almost 21 years ago, they asked me, well, actually, this is March, it is 21 years ago.
Oh,
They asked me, it's like, well, don't you have to play like the same songs, or like
over and over. Yeah.
don't you have to play parts? And I said, yeah, I mean, but we don't do the same set every night. The certain songs get played almost every night, but I'm fine with this. I'm not even just sanguine about it. I love it. I love what we play. So, because I think that the concerts communicate something that is not just whatever Jeff's singing about, but it's about a band. It's about a band with a lot of dynamics and a kind of catharsis that happens towards the end of the evening when we just rock the hell out. Generally,
Yeah.
that I'm comfortable with that. Okay.
Right.
But so I don't mind playing, certain songs at this point have become kind of ritualized. But I'm cool with this. But a lot of my improviser friends, who are wonderful and I love them, they couldn't do this. I mean, it's just not them. It's not their thing. In the case of Concentric Quartet, I'm fine if the music sounds articulate, becomes more articulate by
Right.
reapproaching the
Mhm.
pieces night after night. But I know with the caliber of the improvisers that I'm playing with that, we can expand, we can take this music somewhere else if we want to. And so I want to make sure that we have that freedom implicit without it being doctrine and with me
Right.
wagging my finger or something. So
Right.
that's it. That's my goal. I don't know. I'm just hoping I can play some decent guitar, because as I've gotten older, I also have some trouble with my hands and arms. So um, I'm trying to do my exercises every morning and open up
Right.
my arm and shoulders. I'm having trouble with my elbow. It's not fun getting older, I guess, but I'm
Trying to keep up, basically. Yeah.
glad I'm still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And so are we. Nels, I can only say that having been a fan of Wilco, having followed your career for years and years, you not only have been a true source of inspiration for myself, but it's been an absolute honor and pleasure talking to you today.
Oh man, Francesco, thank you so much. I'm always amazed when, I truly am generally surprised and amazed when I find out people have heard my music and and like it. Seriously.